Hello, and welcome to the Fair Housing Accessibility First training curriculum on approaches to appliances and kitchens. This training is approximately an hour and a half in length. Under the GoToWebinar platform, you will find several dashboard items. This includes the viewing screen. You will see at the top, it will state whose screen you are viewing and allow you to zoom in or screenshot the items you see on the screen. The webcam function should be disabled. The GoToWebinar dashboard and control panel. You can set up the dashboard to include the screen that is being shared and the GoToWebinar control panel. Or you can move it to another window if you have multiple screens. The GoToWebinar control panel is where you will control your audio, review any handouts, and ask any questions. Today, we have 3 handouts in the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel. These handouts include the Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines, the Fair Housing Act Design Manual, and the workbook for today's training. During the webinar, we will be conducting knowledge checks. The GoToWebinar platform calls these quick polls. When we launch the polls, they will automatically appear. To select your answer, click the circle next to the answer and hit submit at the bottom. GoToWebinar certificates. For attending at least 45 minutes of today's presentation, you will receive an attendance certificate. If you attend for less than 45 minutes, you will not receive an attendance certificate. The attendance certificate will be sent to you on Wednesday. If you take the final quiz, which will be available at the end of today's presentation, and pass the quiz, you will receive a passing certificate. The final quiz was in the reminder email and will be in the email that comes to participants 2 hours after the end of the webinar. You may take the quiz anytime following this training, and passing certificates will be immediately issued for a score of 80% or higher. Agenda, topics, and learning objectives. Today's agenda includes an introduction, topics, and learning objectives to help you understand Fair Housing Act Requirement 7, approaches to appliances and kitchens. During this session, we will cover the following topics and learning objectives. Our terminal learning objective, or TLO, is to identify the design and construction guidance provided for approaches to appliances in kitchens within the Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines and the Fair Housing Act Design Manual. Our topics and enabling learning objectives, or ELOs, are as follows. Topic 1, Fair Housing Act Overview. Identify the history and protections of the Fair Housing Act and the standards used to comply with the Act. Topic 2, designing an FHA compliant kitchen. Understand the importance of selecting the appropriate kitchen design. Topic 3, clear floor space. Identify the clear floor space required in a usable kitchen. Topic 4, designing kitchen clear floor space. Identify the clear floor space required for kitchen appliances. Topic 5, clearance between opposing elements. Identify the clearance required between opposing elements in a kitchen. Topic 6, design clear floor space for U-shaped kitchens. Recognize the clear floor space required in U-shaped kitchens. Topic 7, additional approaches. And the ELO is identify the clear floor space requirements for pantries, wall ovens, and laundry equipment. And also identify recommendations for increased accessibility in kitchens. We will follow that with the live Q&A session, and then the knowledge check review, and then we will close and you will be able to take your final quiz. This training relies on the provisions of the Fair Housing Act and its regulations, the Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines and the supplemental questions and answers, the American National Standards Institute, also known as ANSI or ANSI, A117.1, the 1986 version, and the Fair Housing Act Design Manual for the guidance that it provides about compliance with the technical design and construction requirements in the Act. Today's presenters include Mr. Eric Contreras, Mr. Joe Burns, and Miss Crystal Nolan. I'm Miss Crystal Nolan. Mr. Contreras, our subject matter expert, has 20 years of experience performing accessibility consulting services, Americans with Disabilities Act or ADA compliance evaluations, implementation plan development, ADA corporate policy guidance and interpretation, and ADA compliance reviews. During the live Q&A session, Mr. Contreras will answer your questions, which you can type in the questions pod. Mr. Burns has 20 years of experience in education as a teacher and an instructional designer. And he has worked with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the U.S. Army, and HUD. And I am Crystal Nolan. I have worked in education, media, and advocacy for over 20 years, and I am very pleased to assist with today's training. Today's technical support will be provided by Ms. Corey Nolan and Ms. Alexia Brown. Ms. Liz Dyson will take your questions and organize them for the Q&A portion of today's presentation. HUD provides design and construction assistance to architects, builders, code officials, and others with successfully meeting the accessibility requirements of the FHA via its Design and Construction Resource Center, known as the DCRC. Call or email the DCRC to talk with subject matter experts for comprehensive, detailed answers to your questions. The DCRC can be contacted by calling 888-341-7781. Or you can reach the DCRC by emailing fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. Okay, we're going to move into topic 1, Fair Housing Act overview. Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 was enacted over 50 years ago. Also known as the Fair Housing Act or the FHA, this landmark legislation outlawed discrimination in public and private housing and prohibited housing discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. The FHA's coverage was amended by Congress in 1988 to prohibit discriminatory housing practices based on familial status and disability. For more information about the protections of the FHA, scan the QR code or visit HUD's website. HUD's technical assistance was developed into 7 basic technical requirements for the guidelines. The requirements were designed to provide access to equal housing for people with different types of disabilities, including mobility impairments and vision or hearing disabilities. The guidelines established the minimal levels of accessibility and clarified which areas of a multifamily development would have accessibility obligations. The 7 requirements are: Requirement 1, an accessible building entrance on an accessible route. Requirement 2, accessible and usable public and common use areas. Requirement 3, usable doors. Requirement 4, accessible routes into and through the covered unit. Requirement 5, light switches, electrical outlets, thermostats, and other environmental controls in accessible locations. Requirement 6, reinforced walls in bathrooms for the later installation of grab bars. And requirement 7, usable kitchens and bathrooms. Today's training focuses on requirement 7 and provides details for approaches to appliances in FHA compliant kitchens. Safe harbors. Because the FHA does not establish a single accessibility standard, architects, designers, and builders must choose a standard that provides a safe harbor for building projects. A safe harbor is a recognized objective standard that, if followed without deviation, ensures compliance with the FHA's design and construction requirements. There are 15 HUD-approved safe harbors. For a list of HUD-approved safe harbors, scan the QR code or visit the Frequently Asked Questions page on HUD's website. All right, Joe, that brings us to our first knowledge check, so I'm going to send it over to you.
Thank you, Crystal. So knowledge check 1 asks, in 1988, Congress amended the FHA coverage to prohibit discriminatory housing practices based on disability. Is this A, true, or B, false? And now I'm going to open the poll. Everyone. Give everyone a few seconds to read and vote. Once again, knowledge check 1. In 1988, Congress amended the FHA coverage to prohibit discriminatory housing practices based on disability. Is that A, true, or B, false? We'll give everyone a few more seconds. Looks like we've got just about everyone. I'm going to close this poll. And Krista, we'll pass it on to you to wrap up topic 1.
Fantastic. Key takeaways. In 1988, Congress amended the FHA coverage to prohibit discriminatory housing practices, based on disability. HUD's technical assistance was developed into 7 technical requirements. A safe harbor is a recognized standard ensuring FHA compliance. There are 15 HUD-approved safe harbors. Okay, now we're going to move into topic 2, designing an FHA-compliant kitchen. A kitchen is a room or space used to prepare meals, which includes areas to store food and the items used to prepare meals. It also functions as a space for serving meals and consists of the fixtures used for pre- and post-meal cleanup. Kitchens that comply with the guidelines can be designed to look and function like conventional kitchens typically found in multifamily housing. What is a usable kitchen? A usable kitchen, as specified in the guidelines, is not necessarily an accessible kitchen, but it does provide maneuvering space for a person who uses a wheelchair, scooter, or walker to approach and operate most appliances and fixtures. Counters should be at a height of 32 to 34 inches to be easily used by a seated person. Usable kitchen specifications. The guidelines provide 3 specifications for usable kitchens. Those specifications are: 1, minimum clear floor spaces at fixtures and appliances. 2, clearances between counters. And additional specifications when a U-shaped kitchen is planned. And Joe, that's going to bring us back to you for our second knowledge check.
Thank you, Crystal. Knowledge check number 2 states, which of these is not defined in the guidelines for usable kitchens? Is it A, minimum clear floor space and appliances, or B, appliances required in a kitchen? Once again, we'll open this poll for everyone. And I'll read it again. Knowledge check 2. Which of these is not defined in the guidelines for usable kitchens? Is it A, minimum clear floor space and appliances, or B, appliances required in a kitchen? A few more seconds, everyone get their choices in. Looks like we've got just about everyone answered. So we're going to pass it back to Crystal and wrap this topic up.
Okay, key takeaways. Usable kitchens are not necessarily accessible kitchens. Usable kitchens must comply with 3 guideline specifications: minimum clear floor space, space between counters, and U-shaped kitchen specifications. So now we find ourselves at topic 3, clear floor space. What is clear floor space? Clear floor space is a basic building block in the guidelines. Clear floor space is defined as an area of 30 inches by 48 inches in front of a fixture or an appliance. This is also the standard used in ANSI, ANSI, the Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility guidelines, and other accessibility standards. The 30-inch by 48-inch area is the approximate space an average sized adult occupies in a conventional wheelchair. Clear floor space overlap. As shown, the overlapping of the minimum 36-inch wide accessible route with clear floor spaces at all fixtures and appliances provides the necessary maneuvering space to make it possible for a person using a mobility aid to approach and then position themselves close enough to use the fixture safely. The clear floor space must be positioned either parallel or perpendicular to and centered on the appliance or fixture. For example, the clear floor space must have its center line aligned with the center line of the fixture or appliance. This centered position is critical at corners where an appliance may have to be pulled away from the corner to allow a full centered approach. And Joe, I'm going to pass it back to you for knowledge check 3.
Thank you, Crystal. Our third knowledge check asks, the clear floor space must have its center line blank, the center line of the fixture or appliance. Is that A, adjacent to, B, aligned with, or C, diagonal to? Open up the poll. Once again, the clear floor space must have its center line blank, the center line of the fixture or appliance. Is it A, adjacent to, B, aligned with, or C, diagonal to? Looks like we've got just about everyone. So we'll close that poll out. And Crystal, let you wrap up this topic.
Absolutely. The guidelines require a 30 by 48-inch clear floor space at each kitchen appliance or fixture. Clear floor space may overlap between appliances or fixtures. And the clear floor space must be parallel or perpendicular to and centered on the appliance or fixture. And that takes us to topic 4, designing kitchen clear floor space. Pre-planning for compliant, usable kitchen is imperative. Space to execute a parallel approach must be provided at ranges and cooktops unless knee space is provided. The clear floor space in this parallel orientation allows the wheelchair user to make a close side approach, permitting safer and easier reach to controls and cooking surfaces. A forward approach to ranges and cooktops is difficult and unsafe, especially when controls are located at the back of the appliance. This requires seated users to lean forward over their feet and knees to reach the controls and hot pots and pans. A parallel approach must be provided at sinks so that a seated user can reach down into the bowl. However, some very small U-shaped kitchens may require a forward approach with knee space below the sink. The parallel clear floor space at sinks must be centered on the bowl. At single bowl sinks, the center line of the clear floor space must align with the center line of the bowl. Where there are multiple bowl sinks, the clear floor space must be centered on the overall sink. Faucets are usually placed at the center of or within 6 inches of the center of the sink, regardless of the number of basins. Users can still access faucet controls since the clear floor space is centered on the sink itself. And Joe, it takes us to our next knowledge check. Back to you.
Yep, thank you, Crystal. Our fourth knowledge check asks, a parallel approach must be provided at sinks so a seated user can reach down into the bowl. Is that A, true, or B, false? Let's launch that poll so everyone can put their answers in. Once again, knowledge check 4, a parallel approach must be provided at sinks so a seated user can reach down into the bowl. Is that A, true, or B, false? We have a few more seconds to get the last couple answers in there. Looks like we've got most everybody's answers. So Chris, I'm going to close this poll and let you continue on with the topic.
Will do. Designing clear floor space in ovens, dishwashers, refrigerators, freezers, and trash compactors. The 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space required at an oven, dishwasher, refrigerator, freezer, and trash compactor must be oriented in either one of two positions, parallel or perpendicular to the appliance. Wall-mounted and microwave ovens, like ovens in ranges, must also have a parallel or perpendicular clear floor space adjacent to the appliance. This group of appliances is different because they have operable doors that require the user to get out of the way of the door swing to use the appliance. However, the clear floor space must be centered on the appliance for design and room layout purposes. The clear floor space for the specific appliance and the clear floor space for adjacent appliances and fixtures, combined with the 36-inch wide accessible route into the room, provide the necessary space to open a door and maneuver close to the appliance to reach into it. Clear floor space for at least one type of approach, forward or parallel, must be centered on a refrigerator or freezer. This applies to side-by-side as well as over-under models. When designing clear floor space for ovens, a parallel approach to the range may provide both a parallel and a forward approach to the oven rack, so the user can use the appliance safely. And Joe, we are at Knowledge Check 5. I'm going to send it to you.
Thank you, Crystal. So our Knowledge Check 5 asks, clear floor space for ovens, dishwashers, and refrigerators must be what orientation? Is it A, diagonal or reverse diagonal, or B, parallel or perpendicular? So once again, our Knowledge Check 5, who wants the poll? Clear floor space for ovens, dishwashers, and refrigerators must be what orientation? Is it A, diagonal or reverse diagonal, or B, parallel or perpendicular? And this one got a lot of very quick answers, a lot of right answers this time. So we'll close it out. And Crystal, let you continue on.
Key takeaways. Space to execute a parallel approach must be provided at ranges and cooktops unless knee space is provided. A parallel approach must be provided at sinks so that a user can reach down into the bowl. A forward approach with knee space below the sink may be required in some very small U-shaped kitchens. At single bowl sinks, the center line of the clear floor space must align with the center line of the bowl. Where there are multiple bowl sinks, the clear floor space must be centered on the overall sink. Clear floor space for ovens, dishwashers, and refrigerators may be parallel or perpendicular to the appliance, but it must be centered on the appliance. And that brings us to topic 5. Clearance between opposing elements. The guidelines require a clearance of at least 40 inches between all opposing cabinets, countertops, appliances, and walls. The 40-inch clearance is measured from any countertop or the face of any appliance that projects into the kitchen to the opposing cabinet, countertop, appliance, or wall. Standard, freestanding, and drop-in ranges can project up to 3 inches, and these differences must be included when calculating the 40-inch clearances. But keep in mind, the 40-inch clearance does not include handles and controls. Refrigerators may vary greatly in depth and extend up to 8 inches beyond cabinet faces, and these differences must be included when calculating the 40-inch clearances. Refrigerator door handles, remember, are not included when calculating the 40-inch clearance. In a narrow kitchen, the 40-inch minimum clearance provides an additional 5 inches on either side of the required clear floor space of 30 by 48 inches at each fixture or appliance. This allows a user in a wheelchair to maneuver as close as possible to appliances or fixtures. A narrow kitchen like the one shown meets the guidelines and is usable, but it may be difficult for many people using wheelchairs due to its narrow corridor design, which a user in a wheelchair would need to exit the kitchen in order to turn around and face the opposite direction. In more elaborate kitchens, where an island is planned, a 40-inch clearance must be maintained between the face of the island and all opposing features, even though an accessible route for a 90-degree turn around in an obstruction is 36 inches. This ensures sufficient space for maneuvering within the kitchen can be maintained. Joe, it's that time again. Knowledge check 6, sending it back to you.
All right, so I've got knowledge check 6 and 7. Here we'll do 6 first. What is the minimum distance between opposing base cabinets or appliances to comply with the guidelines? Option A, 24 inches, option B, 30 inches, option C, 36 inches, or option D, 40 inches. Post that poll for everyone. Once again, what is the minimum distance between opposing base cabinets or appliances to comply with the guidelines? Is it A, 24 inches, B, 30 inches, C, 36 inches, or D, 40 inches? Yeah, looks like everyone voted pretty quickly on that one. So we're going to close that poll. We're going to move on to knowledge check 7. And knowledge check 7 asks, handles are included when measuring the minimum distance between opposing cabinets and appliances. Is that A, true, or B, false? So once again, our knowledge check 7 asks, handles are included when measuring the minimum distance between opposing cabinets and appliances. Is that A, true, or B, false? And that looks like we have the majority of our audience has answered here. I'm going to close that poll and move it on to Crystal for the takeaways.
Key takeaways. At least 40 inches must be maintained between all opposing base cabinets, countertops, appliances, and walls. Handles and controls are excluded from the 40-inch measurement between all opposing elements. Appliance depths must be included when calculating the 40-inch clearances. In a narrow kitchen, the 40-inch minimum clearance provides an additional 5 inches on either side of the required clear floor space of 30 by 48 inches at each fixture or appliance. A 40-inch clearance must be maintained between the face of an island and all opposing features. And that takes us to topic 6, designing clear floor space for U-shaped kitchens. A minimum 60-inch diameter turning circle is required in a U-shaped kitchen with a sink, range, or cooktop at its base. This turning diameter is necessary to provide adequate maneuvering space for a person using a wheelchair to approach and position themselves parallel to the appliance or fixture at the base of the U. Any appliances like refrigerators and ranges that project beyond countertops and cabinets must not encroach upon this 60-inch diameter turning space. In addition to the turning space, the kitchen must be arranged so there is a 30 by 48-inch clear floor space for a parallel approach centered on the sink, range, or cooktop. The center line of the fixture or appliance must be aligned with the center line of the clear floor space to meet the guidelines specifications. When a sink, even a standard single basin sink, is at the bottom of the U, and a dishwashing machine is planned to be included next to the sink, the distance between the legs of the U must be greater than 60 inches to allow for a full centered approach at the sink. A refrigerator must be selected and positioned to not encroach upon the 60-inch diameter turning circle or the clear floor space at the sink. In this image, the refrigerator is pulled away from the sink and beyond the turning circle. If the refrigerator were placed closer to the sink, a tray-based cabinet or similar sink cabinet combination would have to be wider than the recommended 9 inches, and the legs of the U would need to be increased. And Joe, that brings us back to knowledge check. Knowledge check 8. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Crystal. Our 8th knowledge check asks, what is the minimum diameter turning circle required for a U-shaped kitchen with a sink, range, or cooktop at its base? Is that A, 24 inches, B, 36 inches, C, 48 inches, or D, 60 inches? So we launch the poll for everyone. Once again, what is the minimum diameter turning circle required for a U-shaped kitchen with a sink, range, or cooktop at its base? Is that A, 24 inches, B, 36 inches, C, 48 inches, or D, 60 inches? So we're getting the majority of the votes in pretty quick today. We'll close this poll. And Crystal, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. To reduce the need for additional floor space, and because clear floor space and appliances and fixtures may overlap, the clear floor space at the sink can serve as the clear floor space for a forward approach to dishwasher racks when pulled out of the dishwasher. Even though the dishwasher door would rest on the user's feet, the required clear floor spaces are provided and the kitchen complies with the maneuvering requirements of the guidelines. Now, there is an exception. The guidelines permit U-shaped kitchens with a sink or cooktop at the base of the U to have less than 60 inches between the legs of the U only when knee spaces or removable base cabinets that permit knee space are provided under the cooktop or sink. And I think we have to advance our slide. There we are. A clearance of at least 40 inches is required. Only 19 inches of clear floor space may extend under the sink or cooktop. Since knee space cannot be provided below a range, kitchens with a range at the base of the U must have a 60-inch minimum turning diameter. Once the base cabinet is removed, the resulting knee space allows a person using a wheelchair to pull up under the feature to reach controls and perform cooking and cleaning functions. It is critical to note that knee space beneath cooktops provides essential maneuvering space for seated people, but it also creates a greater risk of hot food spilling into the lap. If cooktops are to be provided with knee space below, although not required, it is suggested that they be placed in lowered or adjustable height counter segments so they can be used more easily and safely by people using wheelchairs. In both kitchen diagrams, a wheelchair user cannot turn around and must back into the space to open the refrigerator. Removable base cabinets. Narrow U-shaped kitchens where knee space must be provided below sinks or cooktops can appear identical to those that lack this additional feature, since a removable base cabinet can conceal knee space. When a potential resident or owner requires knee space, it can be provided quickly and easily. Specifications for knee space are based on the guidelines, bathroom requirements, and ANSI 4.19 and 4.32. In the diagram shown, a sink with rear located drains helps to simplify knee space. You can see the 30-inch wide by 27-inch high clear knee space under the sink. There is the recommended pipe protection and hinged panel with a disposable cover, but pipes and the garbage disposal can also be wrapped in insulation. Builders should be certain to carry the flooring, cabinet, and wall finishes under and behind removable cabinets. Removable cabinet fronts. The guidelines require that the floor, walls, and cabinet faces of knee space be finished during initial construction, so no other work is necessary if the base cabinet is removed. When sinks or cooktops are installed at the bottom of a narrow U-shaped kitchen, whether the knee space is exposed or concealed by a removable cabinet, hot pipes or exposed sharp edges should be insulated or enclosed during initial construction. No cabinet manufacturers currently offer removable base cabinets in their standard lines. Therefore, the methods for providing removable cabinets presented here are some of the possible solutions. Of those shown, the removable cabinet front is likely the easiest to accomplish based on current manufacturing processes. However, the resident may need to reinstall the cabinet later. Therefore, storage needs to be considered. It is recommended that instructions regarding proper storage and reinstallation instructions be taped to the inside of a cabinet if applicable. Other similar design options include removable cabinet floor and bottom, or with some modifications of rear supports, removal of the entire cabinet. This last option requires the counter to be installed independent of the base cabinet, with storage of the removable portion of the cabinet again a consideration. The use of swinging retractable cabinet door hardware provides another excellent method to conceal knee space because the doors are self-storing and no part of the cabinet has to be removed or stored at another location. A special combination hinge allows the doors to swing open in a traditional manner and, when desired, allows the doors to be pushed back into the cabinet, as you see on your screen. Knee space and pipe protection. Where knee spaces are provided below sinks and cooktops, again, protecting seated users from burns and abrasions is strongly recommended. While the guidelines do not specify such protections, the two most common design standards on accessibility, ANSI A117.1, the 1986 version, and the Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards require that the bottom of cooktops, sink supply lines, and drain pipes be insulated or enclosed. Many people who use wheelchairs or scooters have limited sensation in their legs and cannot feel that they're touching a hot pipe or a sharp edge, and may be unaware that a severe injury has occurred. In addition, the need for protection from burns is an important safety consideration for all persons. Now, let's talk about the knee space dimensions. The dimensions for the knee space must be 30 inches wide at a minimum and 27 inches high at a minimum. Since no specific ANSI figure delineates the requirements for knee space clearance beneath sinks or cooktops in dwelling units, this illustration may be used as guidance when providing knee space. Now, pipes at sinks may be wrapped with insulation, but each time the plumbing is serviced, the insulation must be removed and reinstalled. If the pipes are rewrapped using the original insulation, which may have lost its adhesion, the resulting application is often ineffective, or the insulation may be left off entirely. A more aesthetic and practical pipe protection method is installing a removable panel over the plumbing. This panel shields the seated user from exposed pipes and hides the plumbing from view. If such a panel is installed, it should not inhibit access by encroaching upon the knee space. The panel should be hinged or otherwise removable so the pipes can be serviced easily. Notice the compliant knee spaces provided for each example. Joe, I'm going to send it back to you. We're at knowledge check 9.
Thank you, Crystal. Our 9th knowledge check. There we go. Asks, in narrow U-shaped kitchens, knee space, a minimum of 30 inches wide by 27 inches high, must be provided below sinks or countertops. Is that A, true, or B, false? Once again, watch the poll. In narrow U-shaped kitchens, knee space, a minimum of 30 inches wide by 27 inches high, must be provided below sinks or countertops. Is that A, true, or B, false? Looks like we got most of our people have answered. We'll give them another second or two for the last few. And I'll close this poll. And Crystal, I'll let you wrap up this topic.
Thank you, Joe. The guidelines state that a minimum of 60-inch diameter turning circle is required for a U-shaped kitchen with a sink, range, or cooktop at its base. A refrigerator must not encroach upon the 60-inch diameter turning circle or the clear floor space at the sink. A 40-inch exception is granted for clearance in U-shaped kitchens with a sink or cooktop at the base of the U to have less than 60 inches between the legs of the U, only when knee space or removable base cabinets are provided under the cooktop or sink. In narrow U-shaped kitchens, knee space a minimum of 30 inches wide by 27 inches high must be provided below the sink or cooktop. And that brings us to topic 7, additional approaches. So when dealing with pantries, a shallow storage closet, such as a pantry, may have doors that do not provide a 32-inch clear width, since they do not require the user to pass through the door to reach the contents. For easy access to contents, the depths of shallow pantries are recommended to be no more than a maximum of 18 inches. The guidelines do not address shelving. However, it is recommended to be provided at various levels. At walk-in pantries that must be entered to reach the stored items, the doorway must provide a 32-inch nominal clear opening. A 32-inch nominal clear opening measures between 31 and 5/8 of an inch and 32 inches wide. In the small walk-in pantry shown here, if a wheelchair user enters the pantry facing the contents, they must back out of the space. The door could swing into or out of the pantry, but if it swings into the pantry, it obstructs access to storage behind the clear width of the door. Now, in a larger walk-in pantry, if the first shelf is placed at least 2 feet above the floor, a wheelchair user could turn around and exit facing out. It is preferred that the pantry door swing out for greater access. Wall-mounted ovens, like ovens and ranges, must have either a parallel or forward clear floor space adjacent to the appliance. When a single wall-mounted oven is installed, it is recommended that the bottom of the oven be mounted at a maximum of 36 inches or near counter height, so a seated user can reach over a potentially hot door and at a minimum pull out the bottom oven rack. Controls should be mounted at a maximum of 54 inches to be within reach of a seated user. If double ovens are installed, a wheelchair user must be able to execute a parallel or forward approach to the appliance. At least one oven interior and its controls should be within the reach range of a seated person, even though the guidelines do not cover appliance controls. Laundry equipment. The guidelines do not require washers and dryers in individual dwelling units to be accessible. So they are not required to have that 30 by 48-inch parallel clear floor space in front of them. However, when located in a common use area, such as a kitchen, along a row containing other appliances, it is recommended that space be provided for a parallel approach to each machine. The guidelines do permit the installation of stacked washers and dryers. It is recommended that the controls be within the reach of seated users. If the washer and dryer are located behind doors or in a separate utility room, clear floor space in front of the machines are not required. However, if the door to the utility room is intended for user passage, the door must provide a 32-inch nominal clear opening. When laundry equipment is located in a common use area, it must conform to the requirements for accessible public and common use facilities. While not required by the guidelines, careful consideration should be given to the selection of other appliances and fixtures installed in kitchens, so potential residents who may currently or in the future have a physical limitation may more completely use and enjoy their dwelling. A partial list of additional considerations for kitchens includes installing range and cooktop controls that are front or side mounted and have click stops to indicate heat settings. Vent hoods with controls mounted at or near countertop level. Shallow sink basins with rear mounted drains when removable base cabinets are provided. Lever or blade type faucet handles and controls that are easy to use. And revolving or extending semicircular shelves for corner base cabinet storage access. Examples of compliant floor plans are presented on pages 7.21 to 7.30 in the Fair Housing Act Design Manual. The examples range from very small to large, more elaborate kitchens, but they are only a small sampling of the layouts possible. The plans are neither required nor suggested as ideal examples. They are included as a resource to illustrate typical applications or interpretations of specific requirements of the guidelines under various circumstances. And Joe, that brings us to our last knowledge check. And so I'm going to send it over to you.
Thank you, Crystal. Our final knowledge check 10 asks, a blank parallel clear floor space is recommended for washers and dryers in a kitchen along a row containing other appliances. Is that A, 30 by 48 inches, B, 28 inches by 28 inches, or C, 25 by 47 inches. So once again, let's launch that poll. There we go. And once again, our knowledge intent asks, a blank parallel clear floor space is recommended for washers and dryers in a kitchen along a row containing other appliances. Is it A, 30 inches by 48 inches, B, 28 inches by 28 inches, or C, 25 inches by 47 inches? And everybody answered that one pretty quick and did very well. So with that, I'm going to close this last knowledge check. And Crystal, I'll let you take it away to kind of wrap things up.
Absolutely. So in review, shallow pantries may have doors that do not provide a 32-inch clear width, since they do not require the user to pass through the door. For walk-in pantries that must be entered to reach items, the doorway must provide a 32-inch nominal clear opening. Wall-mounted ovens must have either a parallel or forward clear floor space adjacent to the appliance. A 30 by 48-inch parallel clear floor space is recommended for washers and dryers in a kitchen along a row containing other appliances. So that brings us to the live question and answer portion of today's training. So let's see what questions we have for Mr. Contreras to answer this afternoon. Okay, Mr. Contreras, our first question is, do condos apply or just rental apartments?
Thank you for that, Crystal. So both condos and rental apartments are covered by the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act applies regardless of ownership or funding to buildings containing 4 or more covered dwelling units built for first occupancy after March 13, 1991.
Fantastic, thank you. The next question we have is, can you clarify the height that wall cabinets need to be mounted to reach accessible reach range height?
The Fair Housing Act does not establish mounting height requirements for kitchen base cabinets and wall-mounted cabinets in covered dwelling units. Kitchens in common use areas are required to be accessible and must comply based on the safe harbor chosen with height requirements for kitchen sinks and work surfaces that may need to be mounted at 34 inches maximum above the floor, and also for wall-mounted cabinets that may need to be mounted at 48 inches above the floor for reach ranges.
Thank you. Our next question is, where does the FHA identify the depth of the sink in a kitchen?
So the Fair Housing Act Design Manual does not specify depth for kitchen sinks. So there's no set requirement. However, it is necessary to keep in mind that if a forward approach is required to the kitchen sink for knee space, this will have to be 30 inches wide and provide 27 inches of knee space. And in that, to accomplish this, the Fair Housing Act Design Manual states that standard kitchen sinks with depths up to 9 inches are generally allowed within kitchens.
Okay. Our next question is, do guidelines address work surfaces? i.e., are they required to be directly next to the cooktop?
The Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines do not require a work surface in kitchens in covered dwelling units. The Fair Housing Act guidelines only require a 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space for parallel or forwarded approach be provided at cooktops. If clear floor space for forwarded approach is provided, it is recommended that protection be provided so the users are not burned while using the appliances. Kitchens in common use areas are required to be accessible and must provide a work surface if required by the safe harbor chosen.
All right. Our next question is about dishwashers. Slide 50 does not show a 30 by 48 inch centered on the dishwasher. Is this conflicting with what was said earlier?
The Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines require that the 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space be centered on the dishwasher for either a parallel or perpendicular approach to the appliance. In certain layouts, such as when the sink has a parallel approach and the dishwasher is located side by side, the clear floor space of the sink can also serve as the clear floor space for the dishwasher, with the dishwasher door resting on the footrest. But in general, the guidelines require that the 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space be centered on the dishwasher for either parallel or perpendicular approach to the appliance.
Fantastic. Let's see, we have time for a few more questions. Is the 40-inch clearance between operable cabinets in the kitchen measured from the face of the cabinet or countertop? Can the counter overlap the 40-inch minimum distance?
The Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines require that the distance be measured between countertops, base of cabinets, appliances, or walls. So when measuring the distance, it is recommended that the outer leading edge, that it be measured from the outer leading edge, as there are different types of mobility devices. The 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space is based on the stationary space of a manual wheelchair. Now there are newer mobility devices that require more space, and therefore providing additional space increases accessibility and maneuverability for these persons.
Thank you. Our next question is, does the 42-inch minimum clear dimension apply to all four sides of a kitchen island, or just the side or sides that face into the kitchen area, or that face the opposing kitchen element? I think that's what they're trying to ask. And also, could one side be as little as 36 inches for an accessible route corridor that runs alongside the island to the living area?
The Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines require that for kitchens in covered dwelling units, there must be a clearance of at least 40 inches between all opposing base cabinets, countertops, appliances, and walls. So in a case of an island, this would be measured between the opposing countertops or cabinets that are provided. Now, if there is a side of that island that leads to a wall, and this is less than 24 inches, and there's just a pass-through to enter the kitchen, this might be reduced to 36 inches wide as an accessible route.
Thank you. The next question is, in multifamily construction, ranges and refrigerators extend beyond 25.5 inches. This condition means that the reach to outlets exceeds the maximum allowed under the guidelines. The illustration shown is a U-shaped kitchen where the corner condition is clearly not accessible due to extended reach. Could you please address this condition?
Sure. So the refrigerator and range may project 3 to 8 inches beyond a standard cabinet of roughly 25 inches. So this may preclude that a person with a disability be able to reach the outlets in a kitchen corner, as the standard reach range is generally 25 inches maximum. So it is necessary to keep in mind that at a certain section of a kitchen counter, there may be one outlet that might be inaccessible, but it is necessary to provide at least one outlet within an accessible reach range.
Okay, thank you for that. Our next question. When you measure the required clear floor space at a fixture in a kitchen, do you measure this dimension to the cabinet face or the countertop edge?
The Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines establish that the clearances must be measured between all opposing cabinets, countertops, appliances, or walls. So the dimensions should be measured to the outer leading edge. The Fair Housing Act establishes minimum requirements, and the 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space is for a stationary manual wheelchair. There are multiple mobility devices that require greater space for maneuverability. So providing more space can significantly increase accessibility.
Thank you again for that answer. And we have another question that has come in. Is the height of cabinets between 32 inches and 34 inches an absolute requirement?
The Fair Housing Act does not establish requirements for kitchens counter height inside of covered dwelling units. Kitchen counters in common use area kitchens are required to be mounted at accessible reach ranges, and those sinks and work surface countertops may be required to be installed at accessible heights, such as 34 inches maximum above the floor.
Okay. Oh, we have another question. Or do we? Yes, we do. We have another question. Are there requirements that kitchens have accessible counter spaces? This person says they have seen kitchens designed with open space under cooktops, but the counters have cabinets, etc., under them, leaving no accessible area for meal preparation by a wheelchair user. Can you answer that one?
Sure. So the Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines do not require work surfaces or knee space below countertops. If these spaces are provided, it might be that in small configurations, when there is not space for a parallel approach to a cooktop, for example, somebody provides a forward approach with knee space that is 30 inches wide and 27 inches high at a cooktop. But only the kitchens that are located in common use areas that are required to be accessible may be required to have work surfaces, and these would be based on the safe harbor that is chosen.
Wonderful. And I think we have time for one last question that has just come in. This one deals with electrical outlets, and it says the Fair Housing Act Design Manual states that electrical outlets are exempted if comparable outlets are provided within the same area. When applying within the same area to kitchen, please give some examples of outlet locations which meet the expectations, and some which would not. Wow.
So sure. So the Fair Housing Act guidelines require that accessible outlets be provided within kitchen areas. Now, they do not specify exactly what a kitchen area is, but I would refer you to the ANSTI A117 requirement that specifies that a kitchen run is the distance between an appliance such as a dishwasher or a range or cooktop and a sink. So within that area, at least one outlet should be provided, and potentially one outlet might not be within accessible reach ranges within that same ramp, within that same counter run.
Okay, that's a great answer. Fantastic questions, great answers. Now we're going to move into the knowledge check review. Again, thank all the attendees for submitting such interesting questions. And again, Mr. Contreras, thank you for your answers. And I'm going to send it back to Joe now.
Thank you, Crystal. So I'm going to go through the knowledge checks and make sure everyone has the correct answers. So here we go, knowledge check 1. In 1988, Congress amended the FHA coverage to prohibit discriminatory housing practices based on disability. That answer was true. And 82% of the people who answered that question got that one right. Our second knowledge check. Which of these is not defined in the guidelines for usable kitchens? And that was the second choice. That was appliances required in kitchen are not defined in the guidelines for usable kitchens. And 90% of the people who answered that question got that one right. The third knowledge check. The clear floor space must have its center line aligned with the center line of the fixture or appliance. That was choice 2. And 90% of you also got that one correct. Those have answered. Our fourth knowledge check. A parallel approach must be provided at sinks so that a seated user can reach down into the bowl. And that statement is true. And 82% of the people who responded got that one correct. Knowledge check 5. Clear floor space for ovens, dishwashers, and refrigerators must be what orientation? And that was our second choice, parallel or perpendicular. So those ovens, dishwashers, and refrigerators must have that parallel or perpendicular clear floor space. And 100% of you got that one right. So everyone got that right. Everyone who selected an answer got that one right. Now let's check 6. What is the minimum distance between opposing base cabinets or appliances to comply with the guidelines? And that was our fourth choice, 40 inches. So 40 inches is the minimum distance between opposing base cabinets or appliances. And 93% of our answers were correct. Now let's check 7. Handles are included when measuring the minimum distance between opposing cabinets and appliances, and that is false. Those handles are not included when measuring the minimum distance between opposing cabinets. And 89% of our were correct. Excuse me. Now let's check 8. What is the minimum diameter turning circle required for a U-shaped kitchen with a sink, range, or cooktop at its base? And that was 60 inches. 60 inches. And 97% of the respondents got that one right. Number 9. Knowledge number 9. In narrow U-shaped kitchens, knee space a minimum of 30 inches wide by 27 inches high must be provided below sinks or cooktops. And that statement is true. So yes, in a narrow U-shaped kitchen, knee space of 30 inches by 27 inches must be provided. And 89% of our answers were correct. And our final knowledge check was a 30-inch by 48-inch parallel clear floor space. It's recommended for washers and dryers and a kitchen along a row containing other appliances. So that was choice A, 30 inches by 48 inches. And everyone, so 100% of people got that one right. So really good, great job on the knowledge checks. And with that, I'm going to send it to Crystal, and you can learn about your certificates.
For attending at least 45 minutes of today's presentation, you will receive an attendance certificate. If you attended for less than 45 minutes, you will not receive an attendance certificate. The attendance certificate will be sent to you on Wednesday. If you do not receive the attendance certificate by Thursday morning, please check your junk or spam email, and if it's not there, email us at fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. If you take the final quiz and pass, you will receive a passing certificate. The final quiz will be in the email that comes to participants 2 hours after the end of the webinar. Quizzes may be taken anytime following the training event, and certificates of passing are automatically issued when a passing score of 80% is achieved. If you do not receive your passing quiz certificate within 24 hours, please check your junk or spam mail, and if it's not there, please email us at fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. At the end of this training, there is a training event survey for you to complete. We appreciate your responses and support in improving our training product. Please contact us with further questions via the DCRC by calling 888-341-7781. And that phone number is accessible by voice and teletypewriter, or you can reach us at fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. Feel free to scan the QR code that you see on the screen to add the DCRC's contact information to your cell phone's address book. And this screen will remain up for about 20 seconds after the close of this training. I would like to thank all of our presenters. I would like to thank our ASL interpreters, Jill and Deborah. I would like to thank our technical support, and mostly we would like to thank you, the attendees. We hope to see you soon for another one of our training events, and we especially hope that you have a fantastic day. Thank you.